Светлана Владимировна, спасибо.
You're welcome.
Светлана Владимировна, спасибо.
Okay, dear colleagues, we are on air. So we are here. Everything has already started a minute ago, and we are waiting for people to come. So people, they're starting to come. Okay, great. So dear colleagues, first of all, I will do it in Russian, and I will do it in English. So we are going to continue our series of webinars, and today it's my honor to present to you Angela Matheson, teacher from Turkey. She has currently she's working as the head of international programs and director of English at Culture College in Istanbul. There she organized the whole schools program as well as introducing a bilingual program. She's also a director for the IB and AP programs. No idea what kind of programs they are. She's currently working as a teacher trainer, and she's also the creator of the English Project book series. And she has also helped develop a science course for ESL students. So in Russian, I would like to present нашего партнера. Мы очень благодарны Анджеле, что она согласилась поучаствовать в наших вебинарах. Значит, что я могу сказать? Она очень опытный преподаватель, более 25 лет стажа. Она работает в колледже в Истамбуле, директор программ, создает и создавала билингвальные программы, и сейчас уже работает как тренер для преподавателей. Также она автор серии книг для обучения английскому как иностранному языку. И я даю слово Анджеле. So Angela, you can start.
Thank you so much.
So,
Okay, thank you so much. And first of all, thank you for having me. It's an honor for me to be able to speak on a platform like this. So thank you very much for accepting me to be able to talk about the topic that we will talk about today, which is, in fact, teaching reading in a digital world. Books, as teachers, books are amazing things. Books are the things that most of us are interested in as teachers, and we read a lot of. I think we find that many teachers read lots of books, but unfortunately, the current generation, the younger generation, certainly younger than me, don't seem to have this same interest in reading, especially when it comes to reading in a different language or a language that they are trying to learn. Therefore, as teachers, we find it very difficult to encourage them to read, to be able to get them to, you know, be interested in reading. We know that reading is a vital skill. We use reading every single day. And if you are learning a second language, it is an important skill to have to establish your vocabulary, to look at how grammar is working, to look at how everything else is working in the system. So we need to know how to read. And I think reading is the focus of learning a language. But unfortunately, students don't like that. So this is going to be a little bit of an interactive seminar. So I also have the YouTube channel open so I can see your questions. Unfortunately, I can't speak Russian. So I would like it very much if you write all of your questions in English, and I will answer them as the seminar goes on. So my first question to you, I will give you my experience after I ask the question. Do your students like reading? Do the students that you teach really, really like reading? Put your comments in the chat box and on the channel, and I will read them. But I want you to tell you about the experience that I have. I am still teaching. I still go into the classroom. I teach students from preschool to high school to sometimes even university students. And I find that every time I ask them to read something, I get the reaction in my classroom. Normally, because I am asking them to read something that I like, that I want them to read, that's interesting to me. And that's why I find it really difficult to get them to be interested in everything that we do. I mean, primary school students, you know, you'd think that they would be interested in reading, but it depends on the subject that you give them. So I had a very, you know, I am thinking to ask, you know, when I was a high school student, I remember this very well. The teacher, my English teacher, even though I'm learning in my natural language, made us read Lord of the Flies. It was the worst book I ever had to read. And it put me off reading for a very, very long time. So, you know, I wanted to know, I thought about it, and I thought about when I'm getting my students to read, it's better that I get them to choose what they want to read. There's some comments coming through that, you know, they don't like long reading. Yeah, I get it. They don't like reading long passages, right? They just like very small things, which is even, you know, when we give them a text, that's something we have to keep in mind about how we are going to get them interested. Because if they're interested, they will respond. But when we give them something to read, more than likely, we won't be able to get them interested in what we are reading. So, I mean, as teachers, actually, we need to think about how much do we read and what kind of material do we read, and do we read with the concept of thinking about students? You know, what kind of things would they like to read? There's many classic books, there's many, you know, ESL readers, there are many ESL printed books that we can buy at the start of the year that we push on them, that we are saying, okay, we are going to read this text, we are going to read this text, we are going to read this text. They prefer audiobooks, is a comment that came through. Yeah, that's true, because it's easier for them, I think. And some students do like reading, but most of them never read for pleasure. Yeah, I mean, they are forced to read, right? They are forced to read by us. And what we give them is really, really important. I mean, at the moment, you need to look at what they are trying to read at the moment. You know, is it classics, or is it fairy tales, or is it more about cartoons and cartoon characters? And then from Japan, you know, we have the Anemon. Is it more that they are interested in things like this, or are we making them do things that they don't like? And I know one thing I found with my current group of students, especially the younger ones, I can't get them to do things they don't like. It's very difficult. They prefer doing things which are much more interesting to them, where they feel that they can relate to it. So we're going to talk about it a little bit in a minute. But what I'm going to do is in this webinar is I'm going to put you in the place of the students. So my slides are actually putting you not as teachers, but as students, and how we can make the reading much more interesting. Okay, so there is a strategy called the KWL strategy. Has anybody heard of it? There's been quite a lot of research done on this. KWL, it stands for Know, Want, Learn. And as students, as teachers, sorry, sometimes we need to know what the students already know before we can teach them something new. We sometimes spend time teaching things that they already know, or teaching things that they say, oh, we learned that last year, which is, I think, pretty much a waste of time. I think we need to learn what our students know, first of all, and knowing what they are interested in, and knowing what they want begins to do with the W part of the KLM part. Ways that you can do this is that you can get them to brainstorm ideas about the kinds of books that they like to read, the kinds of material that they want to read. It doesn't necessarily have to be books, it could be texts. And remember, reading can be anything. It can be, excuse me, it can be a blog, it can be an influencer statement, it can be the lines on the bottom of a video on YouTube. So anything that makes them, communicate in some ways is a form of reading. It doesn't have to be a fixed text or a book. It can be something that's interesting for them. So I want you to think about, what did you actually read today, apart from my slides? What did you actually read today? Did you read the news? Did you actually read the news online or in a newspaper? Did you actually sit down and read a book? Or were you reading signs on the streets? Or were you reading exams, maybe, for your students? So what did you actually read today? Think about how much you actually read. Probably you read more than you actually give yourself credit for. Many of the time as a teacher, I always think, I should read more, I should read before I go to bed. But actually, I think about it, I spend most of my time, I may read the news in the morning. I read it online, so I read what is happening in the world. So that's a form of me reading. I'm also spending the day reading emails, or I am reading some of my students' work. So I actually spend quite a lot of time reading. So can you write to me in the chat box about what you actually read today? What did you actually read? Something, maybe in a book, maybe in a blog, maybe some influencer's idea about a restaurant that you want to go to, maybe about a product that you're thinking about buying. Anything that you read currently, I'm waiting for your chat to come through. And at the same time, knowing what students want, knowing what students like, and getting them to read things that they like is a perfect way to get them to read more. If you're expecting them to read something, like I said before, that you like, usually they don't. They want to read something that's that they chose. I just got to mention the term news on the Telegram, an article, and email. So you read more than you think. We read quite a lot in a day. And most of us read the news, right? I don't know if you read it in English or if you read it in Russian, but most of us are reading at some point. So, getting them to read, getting them to just look at anything is a form of reading. Not getting them to read loads of paragraphs or getting them to read a text in a classroom, that can be quite difficult. And then when they've read something, getting them to know, getting them to learn from what they read is really important. Not just reading something for the sake of it. Mails, some of the chat methods are coming through. Mails, some pages for the exams, and one text from my student and the news. Yeah, so we do read quite a lot in a day. So I want you to think about how you can make your reading lessons interesting for your students. Choosing the text, choosing the context, learning about what they like is the most perfect way of choosing the material. Teaching reading, I think half of the battle is choosing the correct material, choosing what they want to read. Once you have the choice, how do you teach it, or how do you get them to understand it? I remember when I first became an English teacher a long time ago, it was encouraged for us to get every child to read something from the book. So every child used to read 2 or 3 paragraphs. So, you know, we used to start with one child at the front of the class. They used to read three sentences, and then the next child read 3 sentences, and then the next child read 3 sentences. But what really happens to the first child who read already? They don't listen to the rest of the texts. They don't listen to the other people reading, because their idea is, okay, I read, my job is over. I don't have to do that anymore. So then when I looked at other ways of teaching them, of getting them to read, I thought maybe getting them to read in groups would be better. Or getting them to read together and answering the questions together to check their ideas for comprehension. But reading is just not checking about ideas for comprehension. Again, I'd really like to know, how do you currently teach reading in your class? How do you currently do the reading paragraphs? Do you get them to read individually? Do you get them to read, you know, in groups together, small groups together, get them to read and answer the questions? Or do you get them to stand up and read out aloud? Or do you get them to read in silence and you read along with them? Or, as somebody said before, they prefer audio. Do you just get them to listen and see if they follow the text at the same time? These are really interesting questions that I would like the answers to. I've never taught in Russia, so of course my idea of your system is very limited. So it really interests me in seeing how other teachers do teach reading, because teaching reading is something that I know many of us find extremely difficult. I know that a lot. I'm going to move on while the business comes through. Now, I am putting you in the students' shoes. No, you are now students, not teachers. So I'm putting you about reading in the classroom, about why reading in the classroom is a really good idea. Especially if you go through for predictions. Students like to think what's going to happen next. I don't know what Russian students like, or Turkish students are really into, you know, these Turkish soap operas that they really like watching. And they're always talking about what is going to happen next, or what is going to happen to this character. So put your reading in that context. Get them to think about what they think is going to happen next. Don't read the whole text, just read some of it. Get them hanging, get them waiting for the next thing that's going to happen. Or you can look at the end of a story and think, well, what did happen next? What happened after the facts? If you're teaching in primary school, maybe you're teaching lots of fairy tales, or, you know, simple stories that, you know, we've heard for years and years over time. You know, stories such like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, or Cinderella, or Rapunzel, or these are stories that all children all over the world hear. So it would be interesting to know, you know, if you put these stories into the modern day context, how actually realistic are they? I mean, children now grow very much more quicker than I did when I was a child. I mean, I can imagine being still a primary school child or a secondary school child, still being quite naive about life. But with the introduction of the internet, with the introduction of places like YouTube, or the children have more idea about life, which some can argue is a bad thing, some can argue is a good thing. That's not what I'm here to talk about. But to me, the current modern day, the fairy tales don't relate to modern life. Okay. I just had a message that came through. Students like to feel a bit of control in the lesson rather than feel lost constantly. That's a very good point. Thank you for making it. You know, students want to be able to make their own choices when it comes to their learning. COVID taught us that students can learn independently. They can learn in an online manner. You know, online learning suddenly blew up when COVID happened. So it was a good way for us to see that students could learn independently. So I'm going to go back to my fairy tale, and I'd like you to write in the chat box your favorite fairy tale and think about it in modern context. If you read it now as an adult, how does it feel to you? Okay, I'm going to give you my example, why you think. So think about a fairy tale that you read when you were a child and put it into modern day context. For example, my favorite story when I was a child was Cinderella. I always wanted to, to wear the beautiful dress and go to the ball and, have a fairy godmother. It sounded like it was really cool. I didn't like the bit at the start with the cleaning and the helping of the stepsisters, helping the stepsisters and the horrible stepmother, but I loved the ending. And then you think about it in today's context. She lived happily ever after. What is happily ever after? Once you've finished reading a context, get them to then talk about what they think happens next. Get them to feel interested, predict what they think is going to happen next. What did happen to Cinderella? What happened to her? Was she happy ever after in her big palace with her beautiful prince? Or did the stepsisters come back and haunt her? And try to interfere in her life. What happens? Did something happen to her? I don't know. But getting them to predict and getting them to relate it to their modern ideas is a lot more exciting for them. You can then connect it to a writing activity where you're getting them to talk about or write about what they think happened to the character next. Use the clues, get the students to look at the clues inside the reading to talk about it, and get them to relate the text to their personal experience. If they can relate, if I was Cinderella, I wouldn't have married the prince. I don't know him. He just came to my house and put my shoes on. So why should I marry him? What should I do about it? To me, it's a different kind of, it's a new life. I don't understand it at the moment. I don't understand how Cinderella could live happily ever after. There's too much going on. Okay. This brings me to the connections. Make connections to the world, your life, and experiences. So when you are, as a person, reading a text, relate it to your life. When you're getting students to read texts, get them to relate it to their life. Get them to think about what they would do in that situation. What would they do if they read this and something happened to them? It could be something very, very simple. It's just reading a non-fiction text about an animal, or it could be something like reading a story about someone like Harry Potter or a magician, or, ask how they would relate it to their lives. What would they do in that strategy? Relate themselves to the text. Is there any characters in the book that they've connected with, that they feel that they've had some experiences with? Or is it because, they're not interested, so they're not going to relate to it at all? Getting them to read about the life of their favorite sports character, or their sports star, or an influencer, or their favorite pop singer is a way of getting them to be interested in reading something. So it would be, it would be nice if you could give them something that they really wanted to read, giving them options, not just giving them one text. Maybe if you have A1, A2 level students, giving them options to read. You can read this book or this book or this book, getting them to connect, getting them to decide how they want to read it. I'm still waiting for some fairy tale answers. What is your favorite fairy tale, and how do you relate it into modern life now? How do you feel about it now that what you've read it? It'd be nice if I could get some answers for that. It interests me. Things like this interest me. Okay, so main idea. What was the story about? What was the story related to? How would you sit in a classroom and get them to talk about the story? Maybe they have limited language. We always need to think about, if we are teaching primary school students or A1 level students, maybe they have a really interesting idea about the text, but they can't express their idea because they're not 100% about the language yet. So maybe you could get them to draw what they think is the main idea of the story is, or what do you think is going to come next, or how they are going to interact with each other. Don't always think that they have to write or express themselves in a vocal way. They can do it in a picture way. and that can help them express their ideas if their language is not at that level yet. You know, reading and summarizing what you read is quite a difficult skill. And it's not something that a lower level student will find to do very easily. But certainly asking questions about the reading text. What will happen next? Not reading comprehension. I don't want to go into that because reading comprehension, we all do. The students know how to do it. It's you know, something that it's standard for us to do. But asking what happens next, looking for clues, looking for characters, talking about the setting of the book. You know, getting them to investigate if it's set in a different country or if it's set in a different city that they don't know, getting them to talk about, or a different area, maybe it's set on Mars, getting them to find out about the setting, getting them to find out about the ideas about what the things are. Julia just wrote a message. Good evening, used to read together and give listening before reading. Okay, that's a good idea. Somebody read The Little Mermaid and other stories. Little Mermaid in today's context, how would it be? I don't know. What would Little Mermaid be like today? Would current students, your current students be able to relate to Little Mermaid, maybe? Oh, Hans Christian Andersen, yes, he was a very good one. We used to read him a lot when I was a child. But I don't know, how would Little Mermaid relate to today? I have no idea. It would be interesting if you asked your students, do they know anything about mermaids? Do they think mermaids exist? You know, because sometimes I think they're a bit more in reality than we ever were when I was a child. I was living in a completely different dream, I think, sometimes. Okay, so main ideas of texts, getting them to look for the important information in a story. What is the story about? This is, of course, checking their comprehension. You know, asking them, you know, how did the story adapt? What happened at the beginning? What happened at the middle? What happened at the end? And what's going to happen next? Getting them to adapt to the different ideas that they have. Okay. Feeling like a detective, looking at the book and trying to solve something about the book. While I'm talking about this, I would like people to write in the chat box about what kind of books they like reading. Do you like horror books or adventure books, or do you like non-fiction books? Or imagine you as a child, not as an adult, please. We're in the child's shoes at the moment. Imagine yourself as a child, and what kind of books do you like reading? You know, do you like books about certain kinds of animals, or do you like books about certain kinds of topics, like, you know, houses or clothes, or, you know, fashion maybe? What kind of books do you like to read? Because I'm going to show you something in a little bit about that. Okay, so getting to, you know, connect with the text. We talked about that. When you make an inference, you use clues from the stories. When you're guessing what is going to happen next. You're going to make inference for the sides. We do this when we are reading. You know, we try and guess about things. Being brave and following your dreams, maybe the role model mermaid sets right. Yes, yes, that's a very good idea. Being brave and following your dreams. So that would be a very good idea for Little Mermaid. Gruffalo. You enjoy reading Gruffalo? I love reading it to my child. Yes. Does your child love reading Gruffalo? I guess they do. Alina, I guess your child must really like it as well, if you keep reading it all the time. Maybe you can ask what they think happens to Gruffalo later. What happens when he gets a little bit older? New perspectives and become a critical thinker. At the moment, in ESL, critical thinking is one of the buzzwords that we have. We seem to get them now and again. At the moment, critical thinking is one of the buzzwords. What does critical thinking mean? What do you think critical thinking means? Write it in the text box. I'd like to know. To me, critical thinking is solving problems, understanding things about the story and thinking, well, you know, if Cinderella wanted to marry that prince, I don't think I would. I don't think I would want to, because I don't want to live in a big castle all by myself. You know, I think I would be a bit lonely then. Or I don't really know who this prince is. Maybe we should just date for a while, and then we can get married, maybe. So, you know, putting yourself in that person's shoes and evaluating and becoming a critical thinker is really, really important. It's really, really useful. Now, while it catches up, I'm going to now look at something that I use. It's a different way of getting them to read books. I mean, we are lucky now in the fact that we don't have to always use published materials. We have the internet. We have lots of things you can find with online. The ability to look at problems from different angles, to compare all pros and cons for critical thinking. Yeah, yes, that's a great answer. Thank you, Vicky. That's a really good answer. So I'm going to look at something. This is where my technology comes into it. I'm going to switch my screen. Hopefully you can see it. I will show it in a minute. We are going to look at something like an online platform. There's lots of these around now. This is one of my favorites. And I use this in my lessons as a way to adapt to students, to look at different ideas, to get them to choose their own book to read. Now, discover meanings in fairy tales. Okay, I told you that I want you to write a subject that you really liked in the chat box. I'm going to do mine first. I have a huge, big fascination with penguins. I love penguins. Don't ask me why. I don't know why. But I can watch penguin videos for hours. And I have some very interesting facts about penguins that I like, that I can watch programs for hours and hours and hours about penguins. So I just put the word in penguins and came up with all these different books that I could read about that has penguins in it. I looked a little bit earlier, and this one was my favorite, 5 Little Penguins. Okay. Now, if again, you can use these kinds of platforms to get the students to read at their correct level, but get them to choose a book that they are interested in, which is the main idea of getting them to read. If they're interested in it, then they will do it. Okay? Now, I mean, this is, we talked about a little bit before, how the audio is important. So you can listen to the book. In this platform, the students are able to listen to the book as well. But to me, this is one of the favorite things that I can do, and I can find my own book to read. You know, this is I love penguins. I would look at the picture and say, oh no, this poor penguin is fallen down. He's quite sad. His mother penguin is very angry with him. How do I know that she's angry with him? Because her arms are crossed like this. And my mother used to do that when she was always angry. So she has this angry feeling about it, and this is one of, I read this book today and I thought it was really cute. I thought, I would love to read it to my students, but if they're not as interested in penguins as I am, then, maybe they wouldn't find it as interesting as me. And I don't know whether there is a song called, Monkey on the Bed, Jumping on the Bed. This is like the same idea, but it's for penguins. Julia wrote that Mulan, the Chinese princess from Disney, was her favorite story. Yes. The only good thing about Disney is it has a moral behind it, right? So that moral can then adapt into everyday, even into now, I'm sure. And also can give them some critical thinking skills as well, I guess. So this is my favorite book. And this is what I really liked, my penguins part. I really, really liked reading it. And for some reason, I don't think you can see it on your screen. It should be coming up. Okay. So you can choose the different kinds of books that you like. Or you can get the students to choose different kinds of books that they like according to their level. And they can read it and they can go through it. They can think about it. They can discuss it. They can do lots of things with it. I guess you're still on my other. Yep, they can write fiction or comics. You're right. Getting them to choose the kind of book that they want. Like I said, as you can see from my screen, all I did was put in penguins. And there is a fiction book and there's storybooks. And so they can read about penguins and or they can read a story about penguins. To me, stories about penguins are always better. Because I like stories. Fiction, I mean, facts is good, so we can learn the facts about it. So I'm going to go back to my other screen because I don't think you can see my book. Okay. So you can put in. So any ideas, anything you want me to write in the search for this part? Any ideas that we can put in? I put in penguins. So I also like do not give yourself to a stranger. Yes, that's the Mulan. Yeah, all about the mermaid. Yes, you're right, Julie. Well done. Stranger danger. It gives information about stranger danger. You are right. So I'm going to choose another topic that I really like. Penguins are obviously my favorite animal. I also like food. I love food, especially food from around the world. You know, I originally come from England. I'm living in Turkey. Turkey has the best food ever. So I'm very, very interested in different kinds of food that I can eat. So I just put in the word food, and you will see that all of these different facts and fiction books come up related to food. Princess Story is an example of relationships. Yes, for high school students. Yes, yes, I agree. A good one for this, Julia, she just wrote that we can use princess stories and examples for relationships. You know, I just thought of a good one with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. How would that go in modern day life? You know, there is a woman, she's lost in the woods, and she goes into a house with 7 strangers. Very small men, but how would that relate in real life? So this is one of the things that I like about online platforms. Physical books, I love. I love touching books. I love feeling books. I love doing them together. But I think now we have to get used to the fact that students prefer their own choices, not what we choose for them. So whereas having an actual physical book is useful, unless the students have given that option themselves, you will find that it's not as interesting to them as if they were able to look at their own. I mean, this one interests me, making ice cream memories. I like ice cream as well. For some reason, this part is not sharing with me, but I like ice cream. So I would think about how can I make ice cream memories? What can I do about making ice cream memories, maybe? I don't know. Maybe we could make some ice cream memories. I'm waiting to see if it's going to appear on my screen for you to see, but I don't think it is. So, you know, something that would interest me would be reading about how to make ice cream. Vic says he loves sorts of crime stories, also fairy tales and scary tales. Oh, I get scared of them. So I don't know. But yeah, I mean, you know, getting them to find something that they enjoy themselves is a really good idea for them to do. And there's lots of different choices that they can use. I'm going to go back to my things. Frozen. Yes, Elsa's a strong personality, good for modern day image of a strong woman. Yes, you're very right. She doesn't put up with anything, does she, Elsa? She didn't put up with anything whatsoever. Everything was, you know, how she wanted it to be, which is good for her. I liked it. Okay, so I'm going back to my other screen. My technology skills are being tested today. Okay. Can I ask, do you like teaching reading? Or is it a really big chore for you? I like it as long as I find something that the students like. You know, because I think that reading is a great thing for a huge project. It's a great thing for, you know, if you find some text that they're really interested in, you can make it into, you know, some sort of project-based learning. You can make it into something like, you know, getting them to make a play, write a story, act it out, drama, role play. If you have a really good story that they really like, that the class is really into. So do you actually like teaching reading? You know, I think that's, as a teacher, reading, sometimes you think, oh, we've got a reading text we have to do. But trying to make it interesting, you know, trying to set the scene for them, trying to get them to talk about it is, you know, interesting at the start. Okay. So we talked about evaluating. Visualizing. Elena likes teaching reading. She thinks it's really good. Okay. Not everything has to be a written word. Getting them, especially the younger students, we talked about this, to visualize what it looks like. Getting them to draw a picture of what they think that scene looks like. You know, I mean, we have pictures in the story, but if you don't have as many pictures, maybe you can take one part of the story and get them to create a picture about it. and then get them to talk about it, which is really good for primary school students and younger students who can't write or can't communicate in some ways, but they can communicate through their drawing. You know, getting them to draw the character, or what do you think the character looks like later in life, or what do you think the character looked like at the start when they were a child if they are older now? Getting them to draw the setting. You know, they lived in some, if it's a scary book, I mean, hopefully you're not reading scary books with young children, but if it's a scary book, maybe you can get them to draw a picture of a haunted house. What does the house look like that they are living in? Getting them to visualize, getting them to be connected, getting them to join into the reading process is the main part of teaching reading. And also getting them to just, you know, go with it and see what they can, asking them what they think about it. Sometimes as teachers is what I think, we ask too many closed-ended questions. You know, we ask them, you know, what did Snow White do after this project happened? It's a closed-ended question. It's not very good for critical thinking, is it? You know, but the why, the when, the what questions are really good. Why do you think that character said that? Or why did that character do that? Would you do the same thing, or would you do something different? And you can lead into different directions, into different ideas, into different projects, into different ways of doing things. So, you know, it's a good way to get them to, you know, to expand and just not just read and leave it. Okay, we read it, we finished. Get it to expand it out. It's a good idea. Asking questions as you read. Remember, I'm putting you in the student's shoes. So asking questions as you read, you know, being active, thinking about what you're reading, asking the students to think about what they're reading, getting them to think about what's going to happen in the next, worrying about why they are doing these things. You know, why did they do that? Why did Elsa do that in Frozen? Or Mulan do that? Or in Hans Christian Andersen with the 5 ducks? Why did the mother duck do that? With the ugly duckling? You know, what moral of the story did we get from that? Because then you'll have a deeper understanding of what is the book about. And you'll also get a very good understanding of your students. If you ask them more inquiring questions, you will start to understand them more, and you will start to understand the things that they like. So then when you choose the next piece of reading, you can start to adapt to them. You can put them in groups, and like I showed you with the online platform, you can assign different books to different students if you wanted to, or get them to, you know, choose which book they want to read according to their level. It's much better than us choosing them something that they don't like. Questioning the author. Why did they write that? Can you think of a book or a movie or anything that you read, or even an email that you read, and you suddenly think, why did they say that? I wouldn't have said that. I would have done something differently. I don't think I would have done that, what he did or what she did. I don't think that, you know, if I was Harry Potter, that I would go after all of them bad people. I would just stay in school and do my lessons. That would be enough for me, maybe. Or not get on the train, just go to a normal school, maybe. Why did he decide to get on the train every year when he knows something bad is going to happen? In every book, something bad happens to Harry Potter. But every year, he goes back to school. Would you go back to that school if that all them things happened to you in the school year? I don't think so. But why did he keep going back? Obviously, he had friends. He was interested. He wanted to learn more about magic. He wanted to learn more things. But always get them to question. And you question. You yourself question the motive behind some of the books. You decide. Okay. Read it slowly. Don't read it quickly. Get the students to read slower. Get the students to absorb what they're reading. Getting them to think about what they're reading. Look at the pictures. Talk about the pictures. Get them, if it's an online platform, it's very useful in the fact that you can click on the words and the dictionary part appears, which is very useful for us as teachers. It means we have less work to do sometimes. We don't feel like we're being Google Translate. So get them to, read slowly, think about what they're doing. Ask a friend, talk to each other, put them in groups, ask them, what did they understand from the text? What did their friend understand from this text? Maybe they can understand different things, maybe. They could understand different things that they are doing or what they are doing in other ways. So getting them to talk about, discuss what they have read, or discuss what they have understood. Because as we know, we could all read the same email, we could all read the same book, we could all read the same newspaper article, we can all understand it in different ways. So it's very good to check what the students understood with each other, especially as they're getting a whole older towards the high school end. But the secondary students could do this as well. I understood this, or I understood why he did this. Okay. And then summarize. But summarize, we all do that. What did you read? Tell us what you read. Make it into a summary. If they didn't like it, they were just like, oh, this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then it ended. But if they really liked it, their summarizing is usually a little bit longer. They have a little bit more, things to talk about. Get them to understand which is the most important parts of the book or the text that they read. Get them to use their own words to recall it, but keep it short. Don't get them to talk about the whole book, every single page. You want them, get them to say, can you summarize this character in 50 words? If it's a A2, B1 level student. Or if it's an A1 student, can you draw this character for me? And write me 3 or 4 sentences about this character, which is really interesting for them. Okay, so I don't want to keep you too long because it's Saturday evening. I do want to get to the part where if you have any questions for me that I would like you to share, you can certainly write them in the text box. If you have any questions for me about how you should be teaching English or reading in English, or how the online platform can help you, how any online platform can help you, because I think that we are moving to a digital world. We have to get used to the fact that most of the reading part is going to be digital now. I know touching and feeling books is something that we all like, but I also think that we need to give the students choices. We need to give them ideas. We need to give them, ideas for being able to choose their own material. So online platforms allow us to do that. And there's many of them out there. Getting them to choose their own material, getting them to be in control of their own learning, I think is the best way to teach reading at the moment. I have put my email onto the screen, and also one of my colleagues is here also. She's working alongside us in Turkey, and she's also, her email is also on the screen. And I'm going to wait a couple of minutes to see if you have any questions for me. I know my YouTube is running slightly behind. So I'm going to see if you have any questions, please write them in the box. If you don't want to speak to me now, you can please write me an email. I'm very passionate about learning about different education systems. It's really interesting for me about how you teach things like reading in your country, because it's not something that I have experience on, but I'm sure that many students are the same all over the world. They don't like to read as much, especially when they're forced. So predicting, questioning, and summarizing are all super useful techniques. Yes, they are. Thank you so much. If you do have any questions, like I said, this is my email. You can certainly get in contact with me. And, getting them to choose the material, that's my biggest idea. Getting them to choose, getting them to decide what they want to read. Even from a younger stage, from the primary school age, I think getting them to choose the material at this age is an important choice for them, because they want to develop their own learning. They want to read, they want to understand something, and getting them predicting and questioning and summarizing, and not just, summarize the book, but getting them to predict what happens to the character next. Even you do it in the middle of the story. Don't wait for the end. Never wait for the end, because at the end it's over. Wait at the stop and think, okay, we got to this point. What would you do now? If you were Mulan, what would you do at that point? Or if you were Cinderella, what would you do? It can help them develop and create an interest. We live in a world where they get everything. They don't have as much concentration as used to. People don't have as much concentration as used to. You know, everything is thrown at us. You know, you can watch a TV show for 3 minutes, you can turn the channel and you have another TV show. You can watch a film for the first 10 minutes, decide you don't like it, and then open it and, you know, switch to another film. They have so many different areas to watch now, so many different options, that as teachers, we need to give them options. Because just giving them one text now is not enough. And that's why one of the reasons why the digital platforms really help. And I think that digital platforms in classrooms are the way forward. So thank you very much for having me. I really enjoyed it. It was very unusual for me to do a webinar in this way, but I really enjoyed it. So thank you very much. And I hope it was useful for you.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you very much. So our teachers say that it was very thought-provoking webinar. You really discussed very urgent problems because nowadays children, they don't want to read. They're just more concentrating on different kinds of videos, etc. But they do not want to read text. So that's why I quite agree with you. The main, I would say, objective for any teacher is to motivate them, and to show them how to do it in a more creative way.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So our listeners, they say thank you very much for very interesting techniques you mentioned: predicting, questioning, summarizing. Yeah, but critical thinking starts developing after the age of 9, some people say. Thank you very much. Thank you, really. And dear colleagues, we are going to meet with Angela next week.
Yes.
So that's why, if you have any questions, if you don't have any questions now, you have a chance to ask Angela next week.
Yes,
thank you,
we do.
Angela.
We're going to have another subject next week, but I'm looking forward to all the questions. Thank you so much.
So the topic will be different, but yeah, I do understand. But still, so I think that they have a possibility to discuss it just in case.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
And I will see you again next week.
See you next week.
Goodbye, everyone. Good evening.
Goodbye, everyone, and see you all.